Hey everyone, my name is Sri Sadhguru Buddha Rawa Bhagwan, and thanks for joining us today on this channel. This video is going to be talking about fading, okay, and what is fading, and talking a little bit about the nature of reality, the nature of creation. I highly recommend listening to prior videos on this channel as they do successively build up in information and allow a greater understanding. At that point, through the culmination of the different understandings of different videos as far as your knowledge on the spiritual path. So, what is this video about? Fading. Okay, I want to talk about a couple concepts, and I want to talk about how this relates to adding and subtracting. Okay, so as we've discussed, existence that exists of the different lokas, lokas that exist simultaneously. Lokas are intertwined in a way, in that way, as there can be lokas that influence some other lokas and exist at the same time. Okay, one of these lokas that we've talked about is the you could call it an energy loka, where you exist as an energy center. I call it the fairy kingdom. Okay, you have your kingdom around you, all the story houses, if you will. Okay, but without getting into details, and I have a video on this channel specifically on that loka. Okay, at that loka, you download the energy, the divine energy, which empowers you and empowers the kingdom around you. So you're the king of your kingdom. Okay, and then there are different lokas, including the royal family and all these things, and groupings of different kings within that loka, within the darkness, lights. Okay, so you have this loka here. Okay, and what you're doing basically is you have the stages are basically at that loka. You download the divine energy, you store it in your heart, and you distribute it to the kingdom around you, and that's life. That creates life, right? Okay. Now, um, the concepts of adding and subtracting. Okay, if you think about it, adding and subtracting are concepts that are essential, basically, to the fundamentals of life and our society and how it operates. Whether that be, for example, the financial system. One easy way to look at it is, when you go to a store, for example, are you going to pay debit or are you going to pay credit? Okay, and I'm getting ahead of myself here already on this video, but basically, okay, are you going to buy something and have less money but another of something, right? Or are you going to, when that question is going to be asked, are you paying debit or credit? Okay, are you adding or are you subtracting? Okay, people who know what I'm talking about already see where this is going, and for people who are newer to these concepts, it's something to think about. Okay, what are you adding and subtracting? Okay, and is that addition and subtracting happening? Okay, you see it happen, for example, at the level your bank account has a couple of dollars less or something like that, or you have something for it or you don't. Okay, but what does that involve with at other lokas, and knowing how energy, in a sense, is in our society is basically the ability to purchase something, right? Securely, safely, having this, right? Okay, having life, right? Okay, so you think about it, that's energy. Okay, so now you have a something addition, okay, or adding or subtracting energy. Okay, or for example, maybe adding and subtracting other things. Okay, since you also have, since we know that we exist within a system, within a program. Okay, and what we're seeing basically is reflected in its own way in other lokas that are interconnecting. Okay, other stories as well. Okay, so for example, a story can have different lokas, but you can have different stories in different lokas. So, kidding aside, joking aside with the little word fun there, so that's one thing to think about, adding and subtracting. And you think about it, it's fundamental to the way we look and understand the concept of our lives here on earth at this time. Okay. Now, what does it do as far as energy? Okay. Let's reword that a little bit. Okay. Instead of using the term energy here to give another side of looking at it, we're going to talk about information. Okay, so I've explained how everything exists as containers and information, and how every being, in a way, is a container that contains information. Okay, and you navigate your container, for example, looking at it from the visualization of a Kalachakra view or system view. As we move as systems, we move as cubes within the tunnels of the Kalachakra, navigating our tubes, if you will, your windshield, navigating it, your container, and then you're the information that's in it. And that's also a container, containers and information, a series of containers and information. And if you think about it, that makes perfect sense, right? Because everything is, if you look at it, programs, containers and information, okay? But if you look at it also, physical computers, containers and information, individual systems, containers and information, containers and information. Okay, down through the whole downward chain of programming, which we can say goes sideways too. And if you think about it even better, you realize that there is no downward or sideways. It's all within the greater computer in which all of that exists. Okay, so you have adding and subtracting. Okay, and now look at it this way, as a container with information. Okay, adding and subtracting information. Okay, so you can add information that you're carrying, and you can subtract information that you're carrying. Okay, and this is how information moves around. Okay, now try to see the correlation between that term energy and information. Okay, and now you see the energy moves around, the information moves around. And I hope you see this and understand this better now. And if you don't, listen again. Okay, and concentrate. If you're going to meditate, you can think about what I'm saying here. Think about it and understand that if you're adding and subtracting, what impact does that have? Okay, I guess it depends what you're adding, what you're subtracting, right? Is there residual impact on you? Do you look differently, for example, if you're carrying something or not carrying something? Information or containers, right? So now we're getting back to fading. Okay, fading. If you're able to see these things in people, sometimes you'll see someone looks faded. Okay, it's not everyone that can see this, okay, until you get to a certain level, okay? And when you're seeing someone who's faded, there's different things that can be in play here, okay? Either there's an energy drain that's happening, okay, so basically their energy is being drained, okay? There's other kinds of different fadings. For example, you can see one when someone is stuck in a story, and that story is draining their energy, so directly related to that. Energy draining. Okay. When someone goes to a store, for example, okay, and does a purchase, what type of the information are they carrying into the building, into the store? What type of information are they carrying outside of the store? Right? Got a movement of information or of energy at that point that's moving and distributing at that point too. And then very interestingly, when you get to the terminal and you start pressing buttons, right? Debit or credit. So you have different things to at least think about and be aware of. Okay, and when you get to a certain level of practice, you can see fading on someone. Okay, you can recognize fading when it's happening. Fading is basically, usually related to not having or not being able to maintain your energy. Okay, so fading has an impact on you at different lokas, as it's basically on some lokas you're striving for energy, which doesn't allow you to thrive. Okay, and you want to be able to thrive at all the lokas in which you exist, obviously. So fading, how do you address fading? Well, that's something I look out for people for fading. When you see fading happening, that it can be basically normal fading of day-to-day activities, which basically you rebound from, you know, as long, but if you're stuck or something in a story or something like that, you might need help with it, right? So at that point, it's for someone who's more aware of these things to help you if they can. So adding, subtracting, very fundamental. You'll see it even in our mathematics systems. Adding, it's essentials of how things work, right? How we understand things. Okay. So one thing to be conscious about, fading. There's a reason. Some of the first stories. Okay. Some people have in our folklore we have stories of vampires, for example, right? Where do these stories come from? These are some of the first stories. So there's always a first story before a first story, but the first stories had some stories of vampires. Okay, and there was different people that experienced living in these stories, whether it be the vampire of the city or vampire of the forest, where there was a lot more people in the story. Okay, vampires draining energy, right? Okay, so whatever form that takes, and yes, that can take a form of draining people. Okay, so that's one thing to be conscious of. The term energy vampire and all those things, that's not a joke. Okay, so you have to be conscious of these things, right? Adding, subtracting, your energy. You have to be able to protect yourself at an energetic level, and sometimes you need some help. Sometimes you need intervention for someone to come and pull you out. For example, you can get stuck in a story too. If you're stuck in a story, you might need someone to help pull you out, right? Think about that logically. You're stuck in a story, in a set of circumstances, something, a story, and then basically you're, it's pulling you back in, or it's not letting you get out. Okay, well then at that point sometimes you need help, someone to come help you, hold your hand in a way, pull you out of that story, and then ideally help that kind of person or someone else can help you develop tools necessary so you won't get pulled into that story in the future. Okay, whether that be at a level, like at a physical level, or if we're talking at a level of another loca where you're getting pulled into a story as well, right? Which is going to have its manifestations in the physical here down the line. So fading, a little bit more information about that. Okay, now as far as techniques for draining people, all that stuff, I'm not going to get into that. I don't want people to start getting into that stuff. Okay, yeah, that stuff does exist, and I try to shut it down as much as I can. Okay, but there's always someone that's going to be trying, and basically for draining, the best thing you can do is grow as a spiritual being, and at that point, you're going to be pretty much above those things, right? Practice Zen aura, follow the teachings, develop your mind, your heart, your being, grow, get physical achievements that are recognized by the system, okay? Yoga achievements, meditation achievements, go down line, and have a wonderful experience and enjoy doing so and have a wonderful life is what I recommend. And for people who are having difficulty, for example, retaining energy, because that's another form, people who are looking down on energy because, they're not necessarily being drained, but they have to open their capacity to receive, in the sense that the energy is there for them to absorb, but they haven't developed as beings that are really able to pull a lot in and store it and grow yet. So that's something they have to build, and I refer individuals who might have encountered that situation to also practice Zenwara and the teachings. Okay, so draining, something to be aware of, okay, something to be conscious of, you know. Some people can even use adding and subtracting to get rid of stories and stuff like that if you want to get into some more advanced applications, you know, adding elements to a story, adding and subtracting, right? Thinking about more advanced concepts of that and applications of that. But it is important to understand that, you know, when we're talking about adding and subtracting energy or information from your being, okay, from yourself, from who you are, okay, depending on how you're seeing it from which loka perspective, okay, you have to be aware that that can have an impact on you, which can be draining in a way. Okay, so what do we do when we're drained? We recharge. Okay, but if you don't know that you need to recharge, okay, well then you can end up staying drained, right? You know, so one thing to look out for, and now everybody doesn't have to go into a panic and think, "Are you draining me?" or something like that. That's not the case. We never want to panic about anything. We never want to stress out about anything. We don't want to live out of fear. We want to live out of happiness and joy as much as possible. Even through the tough times, we remember that happiness and joy is still there. Okay, or you know, it'll be back one day. So, draining, one thing to be conscious of. Okay, you know, why would someone drain someone else? Because energy is basically coveted. Okay, why is a company trying to make profit off of you? And for example, the money that you make from your salary, why is someone trying to make a profit off a product they sell you? Okay, they're trying to take your energy. Everybody's trying to. There's an interaction of energy everywhere. Okay, and that's normal. Okay, at one level, you have one big energy center where the energy comes from, and it's a huge distribution center, which actually happens to be the energy lingam, energy loka, and basically a huge center, and you have transports going out and all these things getting the energy and bringing it everywhere, and then it's circulating everywhere. Okay, and that's energy, that's life energy, which takes a manifestation of wealth here or other forms in other different places. For example, potentially, you know, we're not limiting it to one. It has these different manifestations and reflections in the physical, as all lokas have their connection, the ones that interact together. Now, don't forget, you have lokas of embodiment and lokas without embodiment. So things, you know, look a little bit different, but they still have the same fundamental principles of application, which are siva, if go, which are the fundamental applications of a computer. Okay, so thanks for listening. Just a little bit of talking a little bit today about fading. You know, techniques to protect yourself from fading involve practicing Zenwara and developing as a spiritual being. Okay, you might bump into one that might take some off you or something off you, or pull you out of the story here and there. But ideally, you know, you want to be self-sufficient. You want to be able to help others as well. So to do that, you have to develop yourself. Practice hard, practice well, practice honestly, sincerely, and with devotion. And in that way, you know, I can guarantee that, you know, if you listen to the advice I've given, and if you have a sincere heart, okay, and you're developed enough, you know, you will see the world open up to you. Okay? Thanks so much for listening. Have a great day.